Hello, everyone. Welcome. Today was about accountability in the Florida House. You had the ethics bill to implement Amendment 12 that applies to the legislature, applies to judges, applies to members of the executive branch, that passed off the House floor. Representative Sam Garrison, I think, did an excellent job promoting the school board and school district accountability bill, which included, among other things, transparency for people, for families and parents, as well as school board term limits. As all of you know, every member of this Florida House is subject to an 8-year term limit. This bill would apply to all the school boards in the state to subject them to the exact same term limit of 8 years. And lastly, for the executive branch, dealing with executive powers, the amount of money that is available during an emergency was also passed off this floor. With that, I'll take your questions.
Yeah, your resiliency report came out today, yeah. And one of the things they talked about in there is property insurance and the rising costs. There's not a lot of bills in the House moving. There's one in the Senate that would kind of apparently lower property insurance rates. Yeah. Not much going on in the House.
That's actually not what the report said. So he was referring to the report from Willis Towers Watson, which was released by the House today. It was a project undertaken by the House, and I think this is true that no other state in America has conducted a risk assessment to this scale, nor has any country gone about trying to figure out what is our risk portfolio as a state and how do you address it. What they mentioned about property insurance, actually what they were saying is things like what we did in resiliency, planning for things like flooding, coastal resiliency could have a significant impact on insurance and property insurance, which is one of the reasons we did it. Which we also saw, if you recall, Chairman Trumbull, during his first Appropriations Committee meeting, had individuals testifying about our bond rating. Moody and all of our other bond raters upgraded our bond rating in large part because of the bill last year, the Always Ready bill, carried by Representative Demi Pusada-Cabrera, which invested those dollars locally to protect against flooding. So one of the things we talked about, in addition to being good stewards of our community, planning for things like flooding and sea level rise, was that we believe this would have a positive impact on the insurance market. No question, as Floridians, that's always going to be an issue. It's a huge issue in my area in Pinellas County, but a lot of the steps we've taken are helping.
How do you feel about lowering the retention on the CAT fund so carriers could tap into it quicker and buy reinsurance at a lower rate?
Yeah, I've heard that proposal about the CAT fund the other day. We haven't had a chance to fully evaluate it, but I've heard it floating around.
Do you support lowering the retention?
I don't know yet. We're evaluating it.
What about doing more to deal with the roofing fraud issue?
We did a lot last year. We're still in litigation on it. The thing that's the worst part about the roofing fraud issue is the knock at the door. My guess is each one of you, certainly my family, my neighbors, have all had a knock on the door to say, hey, I might be able to get you a new roof. You had a hailstorm 2 years ago. That is where the fraud comes in. And what we did last year was essentially say you can't engage in that sort of solicitation, much like we have restrictions on lawyers for engaging in what we believe to be inappropriate solicitations for plaintiffs. And we believe that that's legal. I think that litigation is ongoing, and I stand fully behind it.
Well, the Senate thinks they've got a solution.
Look, I think the solution you're talking about is probably actual cash value, which we've been evaluating. But let's be honest, right? If you get into a car accident and you got a 10-year-old car, and your insurance provider gives you a check to cover the cost of that 10-year-old car, you can go out and buy another 10-year-old car. You can't buy half a roof. So it does become a bit of a challenge. I'm not saying it doesn't have merit to discuss it, but they're not apples to apples. I've heard many of the advocates kind of equate it to cars. They're really not the same.
Could you comment on the Supreme Court decision today and what it means for when you all get back to work on it?
It means we unpause and we go back to the business we were conducting. As one of you asked me at the last gaggle about it, and I said, look, they have an opportunity here. Either they're going to answer the question, which will give us some guidance moving forward, or they're not, in which case we go back to the exact same process we were at before, and that's where we are. So we are unpaused. You will see a notice come out later today of our PCB for a congressional redistricting hearing next week.
I wanted to ask a question about that because an interesting decision came out of another state court, the North Carolina State Court, in which they are asking their legislature to explain how and why they arrived at the configurations of their various districts. That I know is nothing relating to Florida, but the bigger question I have is when the Supreme Court was asked to advise the governor on whether or not which direction they should go based on the 2017 ruling by the U.S. Supreme Court, You now have an opportunity to weigh in on that with your map. Can you give us some idea of what you think, whether you think the governor's thinking with his proposed map is one that you are open to, or are you adhering to where the Senate is, where they are?
Yeah,
with
look,
their
I think
map?
the governor's question about the North Florida district and its contiguous nature, raise a novel legal argument. We're probably not in the position to be able to address novel legal arguments in our process, which is why, had we gotten guidance from the Supreme Court, that may have enlightened that. But in the absence of that guidance, in the absence of legal precedent, we are going to operate. We are going to follow the law. We are going to come out with a map that complies. I think you can probably anticipate that North Florida district that was in the previous House map will be similar or the same.
Does that suggest that, you feel that the minority benchmark districts should be preserved, must be preserved?
I think we did that in the House map.
Right.
I want to ask a question about abortion. The bill that would ban most abortions after 15 weeks cleared its third committee, heads to the House floor next. But during the committee process, there were some complaints from especially critics of the bill who said that they were not given enough time to comment in public testimony. The meetings were too short. They traveled a long way up here and only got 30 seconds to speak. What's your response to that criticism?
Look, we have a limited time frame in the legislature to get bills done. So you have a set block of time. We've extended the meeting significantly. There were a lot of individuals who wanted to read statements that were written by other people who were not present. We have a portal specifically set up to receive electronic communication so that if people who want to be able to be heard, they can submit that and not be there. Some of them wanted to read those statements, which isn't an appropriate process. So I commend Chair Burton, Representative Grawl for how they handled the bill and handled the process.
Say, with the budgets moving forward, I wonder, the governor had a kind of a big splash idea about that $1 billion gas tax break. Is that going to emerge? Is that something that you all feel comfortable with? Or,
Look, I think that we're in the process now where we're coming out with our budgets and we're saying what we think is important, right? So the House is going to have our priorities. The reality is I have a concern about the gas tax as it relates to out-of-state visitors. I think that our best estimate is hundreds of millions of dollars of that gas tax would go to people who don't live in the state. You take, for example, HJR 1, which is a homestead exemption that applies to police officers, firefighters, first responders, child protection investigators, active duty military. That's something that obviously applies not only to Floridians, but to people we need to live and work, close to our community. So that's a priority of the House, and that's what we're focused on.
I wanted to ask about COVID liabilities that got passed off the House floor, goes to the governor now. I know that businesses are going to continue to get those protections indefinitely. There's a time limit again on healthcare liability. Could you see that timeline being extended yet again next year if we're still getting?
Yeah, that's not true about indefinitely. There's a time frame on that as well.
On the businesses,
yes.
On the business side,
yeah.
Could you see it being extended even?
If I had a crystal ball to know what would happen, I would probably be wealthy. So yeah, we have no idea. Right? Part of the idea of setting it a year out was because we acknowledge that this shouldn't be the state of the world of the law forever. We were in the middle of a pandemic. We know the hospital is going to have this challenge a year from now. When we set that date a year ago, we didn't know the answer, which is why we set it a year out so that we could still be here and have an opportunity to evaluate it. We evaluated it. Obviously, there was issues to deal with at the hospitals, so it made sense to kick it out again. What the legislature will do, a year from now will depend probably on the facts at the time.
And just to clarify, the business and also expires at the same time as what was extended today.
I don't think that's true. I think it's longer.
Okay.
The governor and the Senate are in a little bit of a disagreement, or kind of a big disagreement, over Everglades funding and restoration money. Senate Bill 10 established a process. The Water Management District has since moved forward with this criteria. The Senate wants to change that. Where are you on that? Where is the House? You don't have that conforming bill, but is that something you're open to discussing?
I haven't had a chance to evaluate it. It just popped up a couple days ago. My understanding is it's not really about money from the Senate's perspective. It's about making sure that what has been appropriated and that process stays in place. We will happy to evaluate it. I will tell you this only because I've heard some of the commentary out there that I've had the opportunity to work with President Simpson over the last number of years on things relating to farming, to clean water. He cares a great deal about clean water, and I have full confidence that we're going to do what's in the best interest of the Everglades and our waterways.
Sir, one question about the managed care overhaul. Obviously, Senate plan would leave alone a dental carve-out that obviously the dental folks love because it keeps them separate from managed care or from the healthcare providers. Your bill would take out that carve-out. President Simpson said he's firm on leaving it as is. Where do you stand?
Look, we'll rectify it. I mean, I don't think it's something that we're going to let mess up the reforms that we're looking at in Medicaid managed care. I think that's a bigger conversation. For me, it's kind of about consistency, Eric. I voted against that carve out when I was a freshman House member. I was in committee with Chairman Trumbull when we killed that bill. So I didn't think it was good policy. I think the outcomes are questionable. And I think what was really, really important and should continue to be important is when we see the outcome data that comes out, whether it's on dental or other things, we should be discussing it in committee. It should be a process by which we try to hold people accountable to the data. I think that Chair Burton has done that and putting it in the bill. What happens from here, we'll figure out.
Have you heard from any of the presidents of universities and some of the private universities related to the NIL issue, or is it because you're a USF grad and you don't necessarily?
Was that a dig at USF Sports, Gary? All right, make a note. Gary's on the timeout list. Is there additional questions? Anybody? I haven't talked to any of the presidents about NIL.
Even after your comments, nobody reached out to you and tried to convince you otherwise?
They did not.
Any comments on your data privacy bill? It was kind of contentious today in committee, and I'm not too sure I see movement on the Senate side.
I just put out a tweet about it. I think I put out a tweet about Chuck Clemens, the whip, and his comments in committee. I thought he was a rock star. So I thought Fiona McFarland did an excellent job. I do think it's interesting, right, that so many people came up to the podium to talk about data privacy. By the way, none of them admitted that their clients actually sold data. So that $1 trillion industry that is out there clearly doesn't apply to them, just the rest of the world. They also clearly mischaracterized the bill, saying that if they shared the data with a private marketing firm that was helping them to market to their customers, they would get caught up in the bill. That is totally untrue. It is totally untrue. I think the members did a great job. Chairman Latvala asked some great questions, I thought, about that accountability. So the reality is this is a consistent theme about whether it's advocates or candidly the media that mischaracterizes the words that are actually on the page. So when we hear advocates say things like, we'll get caught up in this even if we're not selling data, we push back on that based on the words that are on the page. Representative McFarland's bill, protects consumers for the theft of their data privacy, selling it to other people, and that will continue to be a priority of this House.
Civil enforcement continues to be a linchpin in that bill for you. Like, you will not support it without it?
Look, there has to be a mechanism by which we are able to push back on it. So we're open to having a conversation with our partners in the Senate about what that looks like, but it has to be meaningful.
Last question.
Maternal health and fetal mortality, obviously big priorities of yours. There's a bill that's moved through 3 committees now in the Senate that would make it so babies that are born in jail would try to cut down on the practice of babies being born in jail. Mothers would get 12 weeks of leave in order to give birth and be with their child afterwards. Bill hasn't moved in the House. Is it because you're opposed to it?
I can't tell you that I've read the bill, although I do hear about them making it to where a judge couldn't sentence based on a number of factors. So, those bills are in the committee process. I don't have any particular comment beyond that.
How about the university presidential search bill that's just passed the Senate?
I've always supported that bill and continue to support it. I mean, look, it's a bizarre process, right? So a couple of years ago, I think we did that, and one of the newspapers, I think it was the Tampa Bay Times, called us the princes of darkness, right? Because you wanted darkness in the process. It's so utterly ridiculous. There is not another job out there where somebody tells their employer, who's currently paying their bills, paying for their family's health care and their health insurance, hey, I'm going to go look for another job. I like this job better than you. None of you do that. Those of you who have switched from different media outlets to others, which is a common practice, I am sure while you were interviewing, you did not tell your boss that you were interviewing for another job because that would be awkward. So this is sort of similar, right? If we have a provost at another university who's a rock star and we would like to recruit them to the state of Florida, if they're not going to make the cut of the top 3, I don't think we need to out them to their employer. It is a disincentive for us to get talent in the state. As you look across at the University of Florida, Florida State, USF, UCF, I don't know where you went, Gary, otherwise I'd make fun of it. But if you look at them, right, these are massive organizations that are in charge of educating students, preparing our workforce. We need the absolute best people at the helm, and if that bill helps us get there, then I'm all for it.
Do you see similar carve-outs then for like sheriffs or city managers?
I'm sorry?
Do you see similar carve-outs being needed for like a,
School
something like the sheriff
superintendents.
or.
Where do you draw the line on public disclosure?
I don't know if, I mean, our sheriffs are elected, so I'm not sure I see the correlation.
The police chief. I mean, that's-
Yeah, listen, the answer to your question is yes, I would be fine with it, right? So if you're trying to recruit a police chief, right, and you're limiting it to the last three, understand that the concern should be, hey, if there's a candidate who pops up the last second, and there's only one, and they get the job, and we haven't had a chance to evaluate them or look through their records, that's not what the bill does. It says it's public at the last three. So if I'm four on the list, right, I'm not there. So, you know, I think that this allows the process to work in a better fashion.
The number 3 is not in the bill.
Well, it was in the bill.
Not the one that's in the Senate.
We're the House, Gary. You're in the House now.
Okay, so the
Last
Senate, so you're
question.
not saying you're going to take the Senate bill?
I haven't looked at the Senate bill. We look at the House bills, Mary Ellen. All right, thank you all, appreciate it.
Thank you.